guessing there's probably going to be a lot of subject matter to discuss. So with that, Larry Spararo on the new jail and youth center.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Larry Spararo. I live at 1567 6th Street in the city of Muskegon. First of all, let me just say I am here on my personal time. I am on annual leave today. And I am speaking as Vice Mayor of the city of Muskegon after consulting with the mayor and the city manager and having some informal discussions with the rest of the city commission. The mayor himself would have been here, but he had a late-minute conflict, so he was unable to attend.
Can you speak up just a little, sir?
Sorry. So I would like to break my comments down into two separate issues because I see this has been presented all along as two separate items, so I'll address it the same way. First of all, clearly there's a need for a new jail. The capacity of the jail, to me, is something that is up to the court system and the sheriff to figure out what is an appropriate size. And anybody who's gone through the current jail facility knows that it is unconscionable that it is still in use, that it doesn't work, and we need a new facility. And we would just as soon keep that facility in downtown Muskegon for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is we appreciate the economic impact of having the sheriff's deputies who work here stay here and support the local businesses during the course of their day. However, we are not in support of any proposal that would require the elimination of part of the city infrastructure. It was a very recent addition that this proposal would require the vacation of Pine Street. Having spent over a decade on the Planning Commission and having done a lot of research and learned a lot about urban planning over the years, one of the things that we learned that harmed our downtown over the years was closing off the street grid and restricting traffic access. And as a result, not for the only reason, but one of the reasons our downtown started to wither was that lack of proper traffic circulation. Closing off Pine Street would be an economic blow to our redevelopment efforts downtown. Now, on the bright side, it does appear that this facility is not contiguous to the existing building, but is connected by a corridor. And a potential compromise that we would gladly support would be if the building was moved out of the street right away and that corridor either elevated or turned into a tunnel so that Pine Street could remain open and we were not causing harm to our downtown business district. So if that can be done, that is certainly a proposal that we could get behind and support. The other item has to do with the Youth Transition Center. Again, anybody who's been through that facility knows that it is inadequate and does not meet the needs of the children of this county. Unfortunately, despite the fact that we were told that everyone's had an opportunity to be heard, Craig School was not listed as an item during the various public design charrettes. And the first notion that Craig School would even be considered as an option for this facility and the first chance for public comment has been basically this meeting here today. I know the neighborhood intimately well. I live a block away from Craig School. There are houses facing Craig School on all four sides. For those who've been in Muskegon a little bit longer, you may remember a while back the city of Muskegon created Clara Shepherd Park a few blocks away from this site and removed the rims from the basketball courts that were mentioned in this presentation. Why did we do that? Because even though we had a pretty good handle on keeping those courts closed at night, the fact is that the basketball and the noise attended to that created a lot of disruption and distress for the homeowners who face those basketball courts. And the idea that this site could be fenced in and have this kind of activity would be extremely distressing to this part of the neighborhood. This is just not an acceptable use for this site. In fact, Craig School as the alternative school has created quite a bit of hardship on the immediate neighbors between the traffic and the kids who walk off, which get spoken on school property and so on. And it has been quite a bit of problem. I know that I have some neighbors here who will be speaking as well on this issue. Oftentimes when someone like myself makes these kind of comments, I've been accused of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Well, I will challenge you with, why is it always in my backyard? Why is it Nelson has men's rescue mission and the women's rescue mission and the high school and Nelson School and 6 churches and more adult foster care homes in the entire city of Norton Shores? And that's just in the residential areas. We're not even talking about the commercial areas. We also have things like the clubhouse for the severely mentally ill folks. We have the lemonade stand. We do our share, and we shoulder a significant amount of social service responsibility within our neighborhood. And speaking as a resident of that neighborhood, and on behalf of my neighbors and constituents, I think we do enough. And I think it's time for us to look elsewhere for a facility of this type. It may be convenient and it may be cheap, but as the Dr. Schultz says, isn't it first most important to do no harm? And I think in this case, locating a facility of that type in a neighborhood, in a facility that's been a problem over the years, would cause too much harm for the benefit achieved. So those are my comments. I hope you take those into consideration when you do your deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Matt Freehan to discuss jail.
Nice job.
Good afternoon. Well, if any of you need a good bedtime story, it looks like they provided you with one. One of the things that was brought out at the meeting, the series of meetings at the end of August, was the fact that there's approximately a third to half of the inmates in the jail on the date that was various dates that were chosen that were classified as obstruction of justice. And the sheriff indicated at that time he was going to go ahead and have his staff go into a little more detail as to what exactly those people are in there for. Has that yet been done?
Yes, sir, it has. We reported to this committee a few meetings ago.
Okay, so you have that, is that
Online?
Is that it's online?
No. Is it online?
It should be, yeah. The part of the minutes, yeah.
Okay. So what did that brief that came out to still needing the number of beds that you're going for?
Yeah.
Now, one other thing that was just brought out was that there's this underlying current of the state is going to be having the county take prisoners. Well, if there's no room in the jail, the county can't take the state's prisoners. And one of the things the federal government's fond of doing is saying to the states, here, you take it, we're not going to give you the check to go ahead and pay for it. And the state as well is fond of saying to the local units of government, here, you go handle it, but we're not going to give you the check, go ahead and get the money somewhere else. Has the state said anything at all about chipping in for any costs of this project?
Of this project?
Okay.
No, because it's a local project.
But then you're saying, you said earlier, the state is going to be, you said it, or the gentleman from Kalamazoo said it, that the state's going to be requiring? Is that the word?
No, one of the drivers of looking at some of the facility needs in terms of housing space and housing design, one of the drivers is the potentiality for policies at the state level to continue to hold more felons at the local sites. Now, if a judge orders a felon in jail to be held in the county jail, I'm going to hold him here.
Right. I understand you have no
I'm
choice.
sure you're well aware of that.
Right. But if the judge realizes there's no room, then he can say instead of 12 months, it could be 12 months and a day and should be off to Jackson.
No, not if the sentencing, if it's a cap at the state that doesn't allow for that. there are what's called a lockout. If the person falls within the lockout grid, is that the right term? Yeah, which basically becomes a prison lockout. Then even though it's a felony, their guidelines are scored as such as a felony, but it doesn't score them to the point where they go to prison. Then they're held to local jail.
Right.
As the state shifts their policies and those guidelines expand or decrease, in our case, that means there's a potential for more what used to be state level prisoners coming to the local level.
But as we speak today, we don't know that, right?
Well, I think if you look at the trend across the nation, and we follow the trend, that it's coming. There's an emphasis nationwide to do more at the local level.
Well, I realize that there might be the emphasis, but these people that are requiring us to do more at the local level are all on the state level, and once again, they come and hint and cajole and put the carrot before the stick, and basically do everything to write the check. So
Welcome to my world.
If they're not willing to write the check, then I don't think the county needs to worry about what the state's desires are.
I think we do, because if the judge says the person's going to the jail, I still have to hold them at the jail.
Right. That indicates there's also other options. We also discussed it in the 4 days.
Not necessarily. I think, I'd hate to be to the point where we don't prepare for it and then it comes. And now we gotta scramble and figure something out. Let's prepare for it. Let's do this right.
Well, I think one of the ways to I'm almost done, by the way.
Yeah.
I think one of the ways to prepare for it, let's say all of a sudden it comes upon you where you're quote unquote stuck doing it because the state guidelines change, is that there's other counties who have been foolish enough to build large jails and have their over capacity. So merely ship the prisoner there at a fraction of the cost that it's going to cost to build.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're talking about something that you really don't know a lot about. It's more expensive to house a prisoner outside an outside county. It's more expensive in the long run to the taxpayers of the community that's sending them out. So, I mean, it's like when you were convicted of your felony, you were sentenced here, right?
Right.
You spent your time here, even though it was a felony. Even though it was a felony.
Right.
Okay. So and there's more of that coming. We can see that.
Well, that depends on what the judge does. In my case, the judge could have given me probation. He didn't have to do that.
But again, whatever the judge says is going to happen is what I'm going to do. That's my point.
Okay. Next time. I understand. You're charged with whether the judge goes ahead and says, "Here you go. Here you got to take it."
All right.
Take it.
Mr.
Give me about 30 more seconds. We'll be done. Let's do this. I don't want to go over Mr. Spataro's time on it. But the still has to be kept in mind here is that it's always up to the community to decide ultimately who should be in jail. And I'm getting the feeling, the impression on this whole committee that when you're doing something today, then you're going to do something next week, and it's like there's going to be a bum's rush to get something through. I don't think that should happen here.
I disagree. There's been no bum rush. This is not an effort to bum rush anything. I think we've exercised extreme due diligence in this whole process. Again, there's been no decisions made. We are at the point now where we have a framework to start making some decisions, some detailed decisions, but nothing's been decided. But now we have a framework to start working with them to make those decisions.
You're willing to put this on the ballot then too, right?
I don't see. No, I'm not going to go for a millage. I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers who ask for a millage on this.
What about just an advisory question? Do they want it yay or nay? Like the city of Muskegon did with the Sapphire zoning.
I don't think that's an expense worth incurring.
What?
I mean, that's what this committee is. This is a committee made up of representatives from different parts of the community, different commissioners, different disciplines. We're kind of the advisory for the citizens. That's how I see it.
Even though most of you draw the patriot. Thank you.
Yay.
Mr. Parker on the juvenile side.
Good afternoon, everyone. When this issue come about, I was asked, how did the neighborhood feel about it, the residents in the neighborhood feel about it? And I spoke with many of them, residents in the neighborhood, on the phone and through email. And it was consistent that we looked at the neighborhood as trying to build a secure and safe place. But yet, when we look around, there's always something happening in Nelson neighborhood. And we are quite appalled with that. If most of you are not familiar with Craig School, that is a large area of space. And to secure a space like that will cost you a lot. It goes from one end of Park and Southern to 6th to East to West Forest, all the way back around to Park Street. And to put a transitional center there right in the neighborhood, the hub of the neighborhood, where we already are experiencing a lot of problems within that neighborhood. And I'm sure many of you realize that there's things happening in that neighborhood all the time that we're trying to fight against. And we're hoping for the best for that neighborhood. We want that area to be nice for people to come in. We want it to be nice so that we can patronize the businesses that are coming to the downtown area. We would like for the kids to grow up in a safe and secure environment, but we can't do that when we're always fighting against an opposition, which we see is quite destructive to that community. And I'm hoping that when you consider this proposal for Nelson, Craig School that is, you know, that not let the economic be a factor. Let it be that it will benefit what we would like to see in that community. We would really love to see that community grow and be healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Mills, general consensus regarding the new jail plan.
Thank you. My name is Dan Mills, 1817 Mills Avenue, Freehan. And I'll keep this under 3 minutes if I'm not interrupted. We don't want to get into a debate right now, right? This is my turn to talk. Appreciate it. Anyway, this planning process began with public involvement. That's why I'm quoting my friend here, the speaker for today. Big turnout at the charrette, a.k.a. charade. That's what my friends call it. The general consensus was that we need a new jail. The question was how big, and I got to correct that. Actually, the general consensus was quite different. The turnout was big. The general consensus was overwhelming. And the general consensus is, as it has been, that the current facility is poorly mismanaged. That it is, it actually violates ethics, codes, human dignity, and human rights, as was stated at the committee involvement committee, citizens review committee, which was quickly dispatched. Committee chairman, this is all on video. I'm not making this up, and it's verifiable online. Violates human rights issues, violates codes. Even though the sheriff corrected me that they've never been cited. Big difference between being cited and being in violation. Anyway, the general consensus is and has been and was that there has not been convincing evidence, such as a comparison of cost analysis between refurbishing the existing facilities and building new. Now, a lot of people just blow off the idea of refurbishing the existing facilities, but I got to tell you, I come up in a family in the trades, property development, and my brothers and I, as partners, developed the Midtown building, for instance, the Hackley Hume building, a lot of historic buildings downtown, the Hubby House, and a bunch of others. It does take a certain, a little bit extra know-how rather than building a new facility. You can't just follow a blueprint. You got to know what you're doing. But it is actually cost-effective to refurbish existing buildings. They've been doing it in Europe for centuries. But that has not been presented. Matter of fact, questions that were asked in May, and you can see these online again with these videos, I'm not making it up, have not been answered still. Citizens ask questions and they haven't been answered. They're interested. They haven't been answered and they weren't answered at the charrette. It's obvious to the citizens that the driving force in this jail expansion plan is money. As Ms. Hammersley herself said, and is on video online early enough, that this is viewed as a revenue resource, a source of revenue, which isn't a good reason to lock people up. She said over and over again, cost savings, we're getting the cost down to zero by stacking the cells up, by reducing the staff, and by limiting conversations with inmates and their families and their attorneys and the judges to video conferencing. And so we can reduce the cost to zero. That is a national trend, of course. Money is the driving force, and we're not seeking to actually, as I asked, satisfy current market needs, or are we trying to increase our market share? And Ms. Hammersley's answer was, well, we're looking towards state and regional partnerships. Now, I'd like to ask you, how is some kid locked up here who's actually from somewhere else in the state going to visit with mom and dad, or his judge and his attorney, other than video conferencing? And so we're looking to increase revenues, reduce costs, and stack them in like a hen house and raise chickens, you know, instead of people. Anyway, the people, general consensus, the people in this community deserve and expect to be able to vote on this, because it's quite a big expenditure and it impacts the people here. And the people in this community are pretty outraged at the notion that a bunch of people sitting behind a counter here can make this kind of a decision in their face and against their will. Now, there was also a big turnout on M Live, because this issue was brought up, and Eric was telling everybody at the time, it was a big turnout there. Conversations about this jail expansion plan. I checked in from work. By the way, I'm on my free time too. I took the day off of work, and so I'm not getting paid to be here. I'm actually sacrificing it to be here. But I was able to check in there at noon in the lunch hour, and I noticed that there was a big turnout. It was 100% against the jail plan. The only supporter was Mr. Gardner himself, Advanced Publications, a.k.a. reporter, quote-unquote reporter. Mr. Carter was on it. Okay, there were zero answers to questions that were asked, as always, and so there's that. Now, I would just like to say one thing in closing. If you do want to find real information, not propaganda, look online, derailthejail.org. Derailthejail.org has links to the videos of you yourselves. And thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Raise your hand.
Dorothy Scott, 3176 Gilster Drive, Muskegon Heights, and to the council and to the committee. My question is to Joe. You talked about maybe the existing jail, and you want to keep 160 inmates in the basement. Visiting jail and looking at the 160 down there, the lighting is very poor. There's no windows, and they have to have natural light. So I just want to know, are you going to renovate that basement? Is it going to be plenty of light? Is you going to open up some windows where these people can have natural light? Thank you.
Actually, I asked him that very question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We contacted the state jail inspector to see if they would allow, if they would grandfather that space in as meeting the MDOC standards. And they told us if we did some plumbing upgrades, we need to add some showers and improve the lighting and things of that nature, so that we do have a budget to do some renovation down there and get it in compliance with MDOC standards and clean it up. So yes, we will be doing some of that work.
Thank you.
Other audience members? Sir?
Oh, look out.
I'll be very brief. My name is Kwame James. I am remembering the charrette process from a few months ago, and I'm enjoying the commitment that the administration in the county seems to be putting toward collaborating with the community on figuring out the best solution for the current conundrum. I do appreciate that politics plays an important role in any sort of group decision, and when there's a situation like this where we're all collaborating to come to come to an agreement. People often are telling the story of what's happening from their own individual perspective, with sometimes a very blatant disregard for the other perspectives and the other versions of the story that are being perceived by the other people in the room. So, knowing that everybody has a different take on what's right and what's wrong here, I think it's really important to recognize that the word consensus, as applied to what we're dealing with in terms of the state of our agreement right now, is I think a little overblown. I don't believe there is such a thing as a consensus on this issue right now. And I think it's important to be aware of that one fact as we proceed forward, because when there isn't that broad agreement, then you're certain to upset somebody's apple cart. So unless we can actually come to a real consensus, I believe we better all remember to tread very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is he threatening me?
Others?
Well, excuse me. My name is Dylan Hock. Live at 2019 Garrison Avenue in Lakeside. And one of the thoughts that struck me as I was listening to the presentation today is that we are talking about the new jail as an idea, as it seemed, as the population stands today. If we expand and build this new jail, or renovate and expand, we will have this much room per inmate. But what is to stop us from overcrowding this new, even larger jail, as well as the national trends also go? I've seen an ever-increasing expansion of jails and prisons across this country. We're one of the highest. We have one of the highest incarceration rates in the world. And my question is, when does it stop? When do we stop building more space to house people who have committed crimes? There are some people who need to be in jail, let's face it, but there are other people who don't necessarily need to be in jail. There are alternatives. But when do we stop just expanding to cover all those folks, to just throw them in there? And when do we start considering how to fix the societal problems that each community faces at the local up through the federal level, and adjusting the country we live in to better take care of its citizens, to educate and to provide health care and housing, and so that we create better citizens, so that we have fewer people to lock up in the first place. I see this new jail. I want better conditions for the inmates, absolutely. But I don't want to see an expansion of a jail that in turn becomes overcrowded just like all the rest have. And then, just as the gentleman said so passionately, then we have a serious health problem. People are being thrown in a hole, and whatever the ventilation is, if you put too many people in a small space, we're going to have problems. It's not humane, it's not healthy. And I don't think that it's illogical to make the leap that that is a likely scenario in this situation locally and across the nation. And I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Ladies first.
Nell Shafer. I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. One, will the report delivered today be available to the public, and how will it be available?
Will we post it on the website, or is it still on SharePoint, or just the website?
We will post it on the website.
Okay, on the county website. Thanks. And then also, I have questions about the visitation. I know that in the report you mentioned that contact visits will be an option, and you also mentioned that it could be a privilege for families and children. I would say that it shouldn't just be a privilege for families to be able to visit with each other. We had people here already testifying to this committee about the importance of contact visits for infants and children. And also, if we think about recidivism, I think family cohesion is very important. But I'm wondering if you can expand on that. So what is that privilege, or what does that look like? Is it just for attorneys?
Contact visits generally are reserved for attorneys or possibly clergy given certain circumstances. The issue with contact visits, they're very security intensive and very staff intensive. And
Costly.
There's very, very few national models that identify contact visit as the normal course of business. So it's just such a large security concern and staffing concern that it just isn't feasible in a lot of places.
Then I would ask, what is the reasoning then for going to video visitation? Can we keep the no contact visits, what I would assume would be what you have at the current facility, which is a glass and phones, glass between the people?
Right.
Why does it have to go to video?
Well, video visitation accomplishes a number of things, I think, that are a benefit. Number one, it allows us to expand our visitation hours. Right now, we're confined by basically business hours, absent the meal times. We have to shut down the facility when we pass the meals, a couple, 3 times a day. Video visitation could basically occur 24 hours a day.
But will it? I mean, I don't think you're going to allow visitation 24 hours a day.
I would have no problem doing that if the technology and the infrastructure was in place, because what it allows for is it reduces inmate movement. The most dangerous time in any correctional facility is when there's inmate movement. That's the most concerning time, because the video units themselves are in the housing units. The visitations could be basically continuous through the weekends. We don't do weekend visitations because of staffing and resource availability, but we can certainly open up for weekends and holidays and all kinds of things.
My follow-up question would be, what input have you gathered from inmates and their families and friends about what type of visitation they would prefer?
None, because the visitation policy is the policy of the administration. It doesn't come from the inmates.
Okay, I just think it's important to keep in mind the needs of the inmates that you all on this board profess to, you're really looking out for them. I think that it's important to take into account the opinions and perspectives of the people who are affected by incarceration as well. And that brings me to another point, which in this presentation there was one slide about alternatives and diversion. This was very glossed over. We're talking about $37 million, $30 million to build an expanded jail based on the last point as well. So putting more people in jail, and we don't have any sort of real study that I've seen about implementing a drug court, for example. So what are the numbers? What are the resources that you, as the administration, are going to actually put concretely into making sure we don't we need to, use the whole park, the whole parking lot across Pine Street, etc. So where is the concrete information on that?
Well, if you could maybe scale down your question, where's the concrete information on what?
Diversion programs. So there was a slide that listed, I think, 10 to 12 different options or ideas, but then
I don't have it with me, but we have a book that the courts use about the available diversion programs. I don't know if we have to have their copy.
I guess I'm talking about expanding as well. So expanding the diversion programs, implementing new diversion programs, things that have been talked about or mentioned, but not really studied in the same way that we've just studied expanding the jail.
Good for you.
You're asking for dollar signs or like?
When I look at it,
I can tell you there's a commitment by the administration, by myself, and by the prosecutor election, the county board, as far as the Veterans Court, the drug court concept, expanding our options for the females, the mental health court, and the mental health diversion. We've added another staff person with CMH to help accomplish greater diversion effort there. West Michigan Court, Spararo Court is going strong. It's basically as community partners come to us, we can possibly implement something. Nobody wants to implement a diversion program for the sake of implementing a diversion program. It's got to be something that's going to have some effect. So that's the kind of things that we are looking at.
Right. I guess when I mentioned the numbers, I think because it becomes clear to the community and to myself that if we spend $30 million to build a bigger jail, then and we don't have these other concrete numbers, because sure, it comes down to numbers, right, about how much we're actually spending to make sure we don't need an expanded jail and we don't need to expand in the future. I don't see that, and so to me it seems like a lack. The other thing I wanted to mention was Craig's School. I also live in Nelson neighborhood. I don't think there's been an appropriate time for residents to give feedback about placing the Juvenile Transition Center in that neighborhood. I also don't understand, I think within the presentation today, Mr. Marak mentioned that the Juvenile Transition Facility should not be in a residential area. I don't understand the difference between McLaughlin School and Craig School. They're both in residential areas. There's houses on all sides of both of those schools, and so it seems to me that doesn't make sense. If you didn't want to place the transition center in a residential neighborhood, the Nelson neighborhood and Craig School is a residential neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Riley. I also am the host of I Am Muskegon, which is a radio show, political radio show. We are videoing this. It will be posted on IamMuskegon.com if anybody is interested. We're really having a great party video for sometime later on in the week. But most of us, when we look to make a significant purchase, certainly in the level of a car or a house, the first thing that we do is we do an assessment of the amount of money that we've got for the car. Most people don't automatically wake up and say, I'm going to go buy a Ferrari or a Bentley or a Maybach. They say, hey, what kind of money do we have? And then we look accordingly. And most of you here, I would hope all of you, but sometimes I wonder, should understand that we are competing with surrounding communities, in particular Kent County and Ottawa County, for residents, but more importantly for employers. And of course the employers provide employees, and of course all of that provides taxes in a variety of levels to pay for the various expenditures that the folks here talk about every week. And I'd like to at least give you a sense of where we are in Muskegon County compared to arguably our biggest competitor in West Michigan, and that would be Ottawa County. Because we're talking about bonded debt, and we're talking about issuing this bonded debt, in other words, borrowing money without having a public vote, and I would suspect a truly public explanation of really what the numbers mean. So I'd like to put them in a little context. Ottawa County, currently their bonded debt per resident is about a tenth what Muskegon County's is. In other words, we currently, before penny one, fix up the jail or build a new jail, we have over 10 times the bonded debt that Ottawa County has. Let's put some numbers to that. The total bonded debt that Muskegon County currently has is $156 million. So 20, 30, 40, $50 million is a big, big jump from that current number, which is already pretty extraordinary. Ottawa County bonded debt is $23 million. Now those are big numbers and those are important numbers, but there's more. We also have, we hire employees here in Muskegon County and we pay them, but we don't set aside enough money to actually pay and make good on the promises that we make them. We are underfunded significantly in our employee pension fund and in our employee retirement health care fund. And I'll give you the numbers again to our biggest competitor, the competitor who we are competing with every day for residents, for businesses, for employees. Ottawa County's unfunded employee pension and health care debt, this is the underfunding now, it's $39 million. By the way, Ottawa County is about 50% larger than us in terms of population. $39 million. Muskegon County's underfunded is about $110 million. Well, these numbers are changing a little bit, but significant difference. Now, take 10, 20, 30, $40 million, and if you say no, fine, let's get some facts, because you have a dashboard. And the dashboard is quite clear, and we can all look that up. But these numbers are, and if they're off, clearly 10 or 20 million here or there doesn't seem to be a significant number. But when we've got bonded debt and when we've got underfunding for the employee pensions, which somebody's either got to pay, someone's got to pick it up.
On that, Mr. Ryan.
I thought maybe I could get nearly as much as some of the others, but we could either pick up the funding from employers or residents or employees, or we could default on the promises made to the employees. So again, significant numbers. You throw another 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million, it matters a lot. It seems to me that, as you so cavalierly suggested, that we can bond it, we're not going to go to the public, I think that's, I'd say that's outrageous, and it saddens me and it frightens me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yay.
Well,
Good.
Hi, my name is Bednarek. I live in Bluffton. And having been a school social worker for 37 years, I see that a lot of the kids who started out with lots of strikes against them, when I sadly look at the reasons that some of them end up in our jail, it's that they're self-medicating, taking marijuana, and they have maybe passed a joint or have possession. But because they are the underprivileged and under-supported kids, they end up in our jail, and a lot of times for a significant amount of time. So I've been interested in this issue from the beginning, and I went to the charades, or charettes, and I don't remember, I remember the community coming out against McLaughlin School and being pretty eloquent in terms of their reasons for doing that, but I don't remember Craig School being identified as a possible alternative. As well, I didn't remember that we had discussed at the charettes the possibility of expanding the current facility. So I was wondering where the public input was for those alternatives that seem to be the ones that are recommended right now. When was the chance for the Craig neighborhood to come and speak to that, as well as the people who live around here and will be affected by the expansion of the current jail?
You missed it. You got here late.
there hasn't been any yet because no decisions have been made. We haven't gotten to the point of holding community meetings, which we certainly will. I mean, we will be out, if that's the direction we'll get going, we will be out in the Nelson neighborhood community. We'll be out within this, we'll be with the neighborhood, the church across this way, sorry. The church across the street has been a great partner with the county in terms of parking lot use and different space around the county in terms of their needs. They're going to have to be talked with. I mean, we are just to the point where we can start making some decisions of who we got to go out and talk with.
I guess I was misinformed. I thought that this meeting was, and the results of the report that you were, a decision was somewhat imminent.
Well, a recommendation's been made, but we still have to digest all the ins and outs of that recommendation. And if that's the direction we need to go, then absolutely we have to get the input from the stakeholders.
Okay, it seems like that should be the input from the stakeholders first, then the recommendation, because that should be considered prior to the recommendation. But I will hold my comments there.
Anyone else?
Thanks, Karen.
Take a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. December 6th.